I see all these people talk about morning routines on YouTube, but do I really need one? Hi, my name is Michael Tabirade, coach and mentor for self-starters and ambitious millennials. Now in today's session, I'm going to be talking about a morning routine and why it's important to have a morning routine and maybe some tips and tricks that may help you. Now, focusing on a morning routine, it's important to understand that it helps you get into the right mental space for the day. And so I can understand why there are so many different videos on morning routines, but really and truly it aims to help you develop the right mental space so you can be more effective in your day. Now the question is, do you really need a morning routine? And the answer is no, nobody needs a morning routine. However, whether we think of it consciously or not, we all have some sort of routine. Now, I would argue that a morning routine starts the night before. So here are some quick tips to think about before you actually go to sleep. So the first thing is, make sure you don't drink water 2 hours before you go to sleep. You're going to end up having a really uncomfortable night. You're probably going to wake up in the middle of the night, all because you need to go potty. Second thing is to make sure that you don't eat late. I used to be one of those individuals who didn't really care about when I ate, but realized that when I did eat too late, let's say midnight, and I went to sleep, of course, you're gonna feel like you have something in your stomach. It's because you do. So at the end of the day, make sure you eat at appropriate times. And it's good to have the right level of regularity with your eating. Number 3, it's important to make sure that you're not glued to your laptop or your phone before you go to sleep. And so there are different things that you can do in order to make sure that you're primed to preparing yourself to sleep mentally. And let me know in the comments below if you'd want to see a video on digital well-being. Now, saying that, there are times where I do like to read before I go to sleep. And so sometimes I'll have a physical hardback or I may listen to an audio. But again, you have to work out what makes sense for you. This is not me necessarily telling you what to do. Again, it's good to experiment to understand what makes sense for you. So if a book works for you or if listening to an audio works for you, and I would say out loud, then definitely go down that route. Sometimes what I do when I find it very difficult to sleep is to use the app Calm. So if you haven't checked out Calm, there should be a link in the description below, and you can use that to help you just drift off into the land of nod. Hopefully that's the right term. I think it's also important to state that you can actually track your sleep to see how well you're sleeping. So for example, phones these days, whether you have a Samsung or iPhone, you can use that to track your sleep using Samsung Health. You can also get, these elaborate watches on your wrist or a ring and all these different things that can help you track your steps, your sleep, X, Y, and Z. And I'll probably do a video about that at a different point in time. So let's get back to morning routine. So for me, number 1, the first thing I like to do is practice being still. And that may seem a bit obvious. However, what this really means to me is that when I wake up, I don't want to be moving around straight away too aggressively. I just want to reflect upon my nature, my being, and my sense of reality at the time. And so when I get into this space, I feel more consolidated and ready to wake up and start to doing stuff. And so with that in mind, maybe it may help you to think about being still. Don't reach for your phone or anything like that. Just be still for at least 10 minutes and take in how you feel and how you want your day to be. The second thing I do is reflect upon the 3 things that I want to do in my day. Now, I did say earlier before that your phone can be a distraction, but if you set it up the right way, it shouldn't distract you. And so what I usually do is I use Trello. Okay, Trello has been a fantastic tool for me in terms of goal setting and task setting. So I look at my Trello board, I look at what I need to do for the day, and if I need to change anything, I'll change it up. If I do anything that is more than 3 tasks, I realize that can be overwhelming because I end up having this huge bucket list that should really be a to-do list. So maybe for you, focusing on 3 things for that day and be intentional about what it is that you want to do. And again, if you want to see how I set up my Trello board for my goals and tasks and priorities, leave a comment below. Now, the next thing that I do is make sure that I do some sort of physical activity at some point. So for some of you, you may go for a run, you may do some stretching, you may do X, Y, and Z. For me personally, I like to stretch, and I'm not talking about a stretch where you go back to sleep. I'm talking about real stretching and all that kind of stuff, just to make sure that there are certain niggles out of my body and I'm ready for the day, and stretching does that for me. Now, it's nothing vigorous or crazy, but it is something that helps me get mentally prepared. Again, like I stated at the beginning, is about making sure that you're in that mental space. After that, I focus on getting out of bed, okay, and focusing on making sure that I actually do my bed. And I do this because I want to get into the mental habit of making sure that I stick to specific tasks and routines. And I feel like this is transferable. If you're able to make your bed, not just your bed, but any sort of small activity, I feel like you're training yourself and conditioning yourself to get to a point of making sure you do things even when you don't feel like doing it. Who likes doing their bed? Not me, but I try to make sure that I do it every single day and it's routine. And so for you, maybe it's about doing those small tasks so you can get into the habit of doing those things. From there, I have a shower, okay? I need to have a shower. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, anyone trying to get away with not having a shower just because we're in lockdown, it's not gonna work. Look, at the end of the day, it's important to make sure that you have a shower. I don't need to say this, okay? Like me even saying it is anyway, I'm just gonna move on. Point being made is that I have a shower and usually the shower is lukewarm, okay? It's usually not completely cold, but cold enough where I'm like, okay, this is less than warm. And I do this because I want to activate my muscles in such a way where, again, I'm waking myself up. I'm getting myself mentally prepared. You may not want to have a lukewarm or cold shower, but this gets me into the mental space. And I've only known this through doing things again and again and again and experimenting with what actually works. So for me, I have a cold/lukewarm shower. What I then like to do is I like to fill up my water bottle. So I got this as a gift, and really this came as a gift because people realize that I don't like drinking water. Okay, I'm really bad at remembering. And so I like to make sure that I fill up my water bottle up to 2,000 milliliters, which is 2 liters. And I have a reminder on my phone to remind me when to drink water. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't drink all of the 2 liters all the time. However, I'm drinking more consciously than I would before if I was just relying on my brain. And so I make that habit because I know that's something I need to work on. So maybe for you again, is to fill up your water bottle. Now, some of you may be thinking, so when do you have time to eat? I like to eat, so I definitely have time to eat. So for me, I make sure that I have some sort of nutritious/healthy-ish meal, at the beginning of the day. And I don't make it too complicated. I have gluten-free oats, I have blueberries, I have honey, and then I have about 2 milliliters of milk. And the reason I know what to measure and all of that kind of stuff is because before I'd went to a nutritionist who basically made me a meal plan specific for my body and needs and the things that I am intolerant to. So I know that, for my actual gluten-free oats, it's roughly about 40 grams. And then also for my milk, it's 200 mils. And so with that in mind, that's what I stick to. Sometimes I may have a smoothie, okay? So it may have banana, pineapple in it, some other stuff as well, but that's usually what I stick to. And if I'm feeling a bit bored, I may sort of mix it up with some granola, but really and truly, I stick to the porridge. And that's what I usually do. For some of you, you may have eggs and some other stuff, but really how you eat in the morning is really gonna define how you're gonna feel later on, okay? In some sense of the word. And I don't wanna make it seem like it's all absolute on what you eat, but it is an important part of the day. So think about what makes sense for you. So we're almost getting to the end. So what I also do is check my personal emails, okay? So I have certain times where I check my emails. It'll be in the morning, midday, and at night. And so for me personally, I just wanna make sure that I'm on top of things and I'm scheduling time in order to do that. And that usually happens before I start work, okay? So I check my personal emails, I respond when I can, and if I can't respond, then I just flag it or star it or move it into a certain area where I can come back to it again. Like I said, I also work. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a senior implementation manager for NHSX and basically implementing all this digital stuff into the NHS. And so I need to make sure my station is set up the right way. So I'm working from home right now. And so I get my laptop and work phone out and I put my personal phone away, like away from my area so I don't get distracted. And because I have set things up on digital wellbeing mode, it's easier for me to do this as well. And so I set my station. And so that's effectively what I do in terms of my morning routine. So again, like I stated before, if you want to find out how I set my Trello board and everything else in terms of my goals, then leave a comment below. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about good habits that you need to adopt this year. So stay tuned for that. You can subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with the latest content. Understand, reach, and expand. Peace.